so many things. Where do you want to begin on this one, Katie?
Well, I think it would be wrong to not start with the very tragic and sudden death of Tom Kingston. He was just 45. And, it doesn't really matter Lady Gabriella Windsor's order in the line of succession. I mean, she's way down there, so it doesn't affect the line of succession anyway. But for the royal family, this is a deep shock, a real tragedy, and for everyone that knew them as a family. And I think the very personal nature of the statement that came out of Buckingham Palace, who announced the news last night, was pretty shocking for everyone. So a very, very moving day. And as you say, at the end of a day of high drama, with the Prince of Wales pulling out at the 11th hour from the memorial service of his godfather, King Constantine.
Yeah. And the context to all of that, because, the Prince and Princess Michael of Kent were at that memorial themselves, knowing what we were to find out later that evening about their son-in-law. They described as an extraordinary man. He had an amazing career, didn't he? I think in the Foreign Office and in finance as well. And actually an ex of Pippa Middleton as well. So
yes,
lost to lots of people. But they still managed to attend that service, and yet the Prince of Wales, he lives just, 3 miles from the front door of the chapel, wasn't able to go for personal reasons. So a lot of people really concerned about what is going on in the Wales' household at the moment.
Well, and understandably so, when you consider the context. We were told that William's absence had nothing to do with the news about Tom Kingston. It had nothing to do with the King's health. And as we know, the King's just weeks into a shock cancer diagnosis and undergoing treatment. And in fact, the King was seen leaving Windsor an hour or so before the service to come to London, we understand, for meetings and or treatment. So we weren't expecting to see him at yesterday's memorial. But we were not only expecting to see the Prince of Wales, we were expecting to hear from him. In fact, his name had been published on the order of service. Now, you know, Isabel and Eamon, that a royal pulling out an hour before an event, it simply doesn't happen. They do not like to let people down. I mean, they're never late, let alone pulling out of something. So to pull out of something for an important family member, as I said, it was William's godfather, was absolutely unusual. And when you put that in the context of the Princess of Wales, who, let's not forget, hasn't been seen since Christmas Day, who's undergone clearly very serious surgery, we understand abdominal surgery. I mean, a 13-night stay in hospital, I think, indicates the severity of that, who hasn't been seen since, who we understand isn't going to be seen until well after Easter. It is obviously concerning. I must add that when we got that statement out of the palace, it was caveated with a subsequent sort of guidance memo that, you know, the Princess of Wales is continuing her recovery well, which I think is intended as reassurance for an obviously, I think, it's not an overstatement to say panicked public.
And, you know, we totally understand that where there is an absence of detail becomes speculation. But on the other hand, you know, this is quite clearly a personal matter, and they have to be allowed space to deal with whatever that might be.
I think it's incredibly important that they do get that space. And I think it's also worth pointing out that we've had quite an incredible level of transparency from the palace in terms of these medical conditions.
More so from the King, though.
More so from the King. And it was always made clear that for Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she wanted this to remain private. Now, one day she may talk about it, but right now I think it's a case of her having to get better for her family and for the duties that lie ahead of her.
Should we focus on Prince Andrew? I mean, where
it's hard not to, really, isn't it?
Where there was a lack of the King and our future King was Prince Andrew. And, you know, how times have changed. I mean, he was in hiding for a long period of time. Do you think that the King and Prince William sanctioned his prominence yesterday?
Well, they would have expected Andrew to be there. And I think when you also consider the last time we saw Prince Andrew taking such a prominent role, it was also on Christmas Day. It was at the church on Christmas Day at Sandringham. You know, he is still a family member. He may not be carrying out duties as a working member of the royal family.
He was leading the tribe as they walked in, and you know,
the optics are not great, are they?
Prince still doesn't get it front of the mirror this morning. You know, it didn't go unnoticed, put it that way.
No, and I think the optics don't look great. I mean, don't forget, the man who we're watching images of now is still a Councillor of State. That means he can technically still stand in for the monarch if the monarch is incapacitated. However, Parliament has recently changed the rules. He can't because he's not a working member of the royal family, but it doesn't seem to stop him being at family engagements. And I think part of the problem with Andrew is this assumption that when there is an opportunity to take the lead, he seems far too ready and willing to do it. I mean, had I been in charge of those optics, what would have been so wrong of having the Princess Royal there? And Queen Camilla, who sort of arrived last, that was her her position in the rank of seniority. Queen Camilla could perfectly well have taken the lead. So could the Princess Royal. There were other senior members of the royal family there who are working members of the royal family. The problem is they're all pretty old at the moment. I mean, Princess Alexandra was there in a chair.
Right, OK, let's get into the real world. Somebody like the Queen will be worried about her hat staying on her head and what she's going to do and who she's going to greet and whatever. They want somebody to do this. It's like funerals. There's always an organiser. There's always somebody that takes charge at funerals, and they're looking for him. Show us to her pew. Make sure who gets the song sheets or the whatever they are, whatever, I don't know what they're called. But somebody to take charge, and that's all he did. Now, why are you getting so annoyed about this?
I don't think the optics are good. We're looking at a royal family that's looking increasingly.
What should you have done? Just stayed in the background and left it to Timothy Lawrence or something?
I think so. I think so because I think it's making headlines for all the wrong reasons. At a time when the royal family looks vulnerable, you do not put Andrew centre stage.
When do you put Andrew centre stage?
I don't think you do. I think
he's lost that.
Absolutely. I mean, he's been demoted from all royal duties. He's essentially been pushed out. I mean, that was the late Queen's decision to do that. So this idea that he's, I think, trying to sort of inveigle his way back in here, I think is pretty distasteful. And I think, if he really has the royal family and the good of the royal family in his intentions, then he should gracefully and with dignity step back. There are other people that can go and show someone to their pews or lead the royal family out of St George's. It doesn't need to be him.
And we saw last week the toll it's taking on the King. He was tearful, going through all the well wishes that he's received, and clearly an emotional time for him. And yet today, I think his son, Prince Harry, his case is up before the courts this time in relation to security. Yet more headlines. I mean, he was described as the Prince of Litigation this morning. Is this the kind of publicity that the royal family wants at the moment?
Look, when you consider the start to this year, it's gotten off to a very, very shaky start indeed. And, it was always part of the King's master plan when he became sovereign to have Prince Harry there by his side. It was William's intention to have Prince Harry there as his wingman, and actually, if he was here in a working capacity, I think the royal family would be looking less vulnerable, but clearly there's far too much water under the bridge for that to happen now.
OK. Katie, Nicholl, always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.